Welcome back to Bread and Butter, where we are serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. This is episode 140, and as always, I am joined by Pylet. Pylet, how are you tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and this is a Friday night. We normally don't record, but it's kind of a special night, and today we have on a frequent guest. I think you're pretty sure you're the guest we've had on the most times 3 at the very minimum. WorldEight. WorldEight, how are you today?
Doing well. Glad to be here, as always. I guess maybe too often, but sure. Happy to be here.
I don't know. I think people like having you here. We enjoy having you. And then today we have a very special first-time guest, Pizza HS. Pizza, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we appreciate you being here. Now, normally what we do is we have a cadence to the show. Every podcast has a cadence. And normally we talk about, hey, what we've been doing in Hearthstone, what we've been doing outside of Hearthstone. We have a new guest, so we'd interview him. We'd have a topic, or we talk about the topic, whatever that might be, and then say goodbye. Tonight, we have been lucky enough to have a card reveal. And not just one card reveal, we get to reveal 5 cards, and it's very exciting. So we're going to not do a normal interview with Pizza. We're going to hopefully have him on in a couple weeks on a normal Sunday night and do our normal show and talk about maybe something very interesting like we normally do. Pizza's the top 10 player most of the time, so he has plenty of insight for us. But tonight we're just going to talk about cards, I think. So for our kind of like inside outside of the game, we'll just give everybody like a quick 30 seconds to a minute to talk about whatever you want to doing inside outside of the game, and then we'll get into the card reveals. So WorldEight, what have you been doing either inside out? What do you want to talk about? What have you been doing?
Inside the game, just kind of playing a whole bunch of egg quest, egg quest warlock, quest egg, basically egg is a quest. And both standard and wild. It's pretty fun. And then outside of Hearthstone, it's spooky season. So just having fun with October, probably one of my favorite months of the year. We got a whole bunch of like pumpkin themed parties that are like back to back to back. So just really fun month.
Fantastic. How about Pizza? How about you? What have you been doing inside, or what have you been doing in life right now?
In Hearthstone, pretty much just on the ladder grind. The competitive season for the Masters Tour has ended with the exception of last call. So apart from the people who are like playing for the world slots, it's a lot of that. I do kind of feel like I'm in the way because I'm top 10 on NA and also top 10 on Asia. So I keep running into those people specifically. So I've been playing a ton of Frack Rogue mirrors, a ton of Death Knight mirrors between all of those people. But it's exciting to play for some stakes at least.
It's fun to be the spoiler as well. It's always nice when you.
It's always fun to dream crush. Yeah.
If you can't dream crush, why are you playing? Pylet, what have you been up to?
Still been kind of playing around with Dragon Warrior and Peddler DH. Been enjoying those decks and having some decent success. Also decided for CCLS, I made top 8 as a 2 seed and decided to go way out in left field for that and try to catch some people off guard. So as everyone else is bringing, the Pyret Rogue, Death Knight, Quest Warlock, all that stuff, I brought Big Spell Mage, I brought the Dragon Warrior, and I did bring Death Knight because I'm trying to beat some aggro and try to beat some greed, and it felt pretty good if I'm banning Quest Warlock, and it worked for my first match, and we'll see if that keeps going. Outside, I did finish Avowed. I hit credits on Tuesday or Wednesday, a couple days after we recorded. Really enjoyed that game. Definitely recommend it. The ending was, I felt like the ending was going to be a little bit bigger, but the whole last section, the whole last world was really, really neat and a lot of fun. I just felt like it was building to something bigger, so I think that was my expectations more than the game problem, but really enjoyable game, about 50 hours if that's something you're interested in.
And I also made top 8, surprisingly, in the Coin Casino Listener Series, and I more or less threw my games yesterday against Bread and Butter patron Torby Flenderson, and I did not throw because he's a patron. I threw because I'm a moron and I made dumb plays. But I had brought Leech DK. I had brought I brought Leech DK. I brought Beast Hunter, and I brought Cliff DH. And Torby played really well. I possibly could have won if I had made some better decisions on, I would say, turn 8 of the final game, but I panicked. I made wrong mistakes. We'll learn from it. And we even reviewed the games afterwards. And outside of that, if you listen to the show, you know, I do kind of work for the federal government. So please open this up before, I can't pay for my house. Otherwise, we're really going to need more patrons. So let's just leave it at that. So anyway, more importantly, we're here to talk about new Druid cards. So why don't we get right into it and look at our first card? So there's been already some reveals today, and we'll talk about those as well. But let's start with our cards first. Let's see. All right. So our first card right here is a 2-mana epic spell, Alternate Reality, which is replace your hand and deck with random choose one cards from the past. They cost 1 less. Pizza, what are your thoughts on this card?
I mean, this is interesting. There's a pretty sizable range. It's specifically from the past, so I guess some of the more current cards in standard right now excluded from this. If that winds up like changing the pool of cards, I think the past for wild cards is actually more potent, which would make me a lot more excited about it. But I think that giving yourself an opportunity to also refill your hand. There's a lot of dregs, especially when it gets into random generation, that you get to recur cards. You can generate this card itself in the span of a game, and then use that to give yourself a little bit more life. Like, it seems like a fun thing, especially to generate.
Is what is that? The I think it's a 3-mana 3/5 Druid of the Flame or something like that. Oh no, he's a legendary that casts both sides of the 2. Is he in core?
He is not. He might be.
Fandral, right? Fandral.
He might be in core, but I thought of this also. But the problem is, unless you have him on board, this card replaces him because it's handy in deck. So you'd have to have it on board, then play this, or else you don't have it. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh, there might be something there, especially with them costing 1 less. But then I remembered that.
All right, get this.
Yep.
Generate Raven Idol and then discover Fandral.
There we go.
Repeat the process.
Perfect.
I'm just looking forward to it. I know WorldEight is envisioning right now. I can see in his brain he's going to play this in a token deck, and he's going to generate Drum Circle, and then just punch his opponent in the face. WorldEight, what are your thoughts on this card?
It's kind of funny. I don't even know if Pizza knows this. I kind of have a history with Pizza playing Drum Circle, maybe to his great annoyance, on ladder back when it was actually viable. The pool for choose ones is, from any pool from the past is actually pretty questionable, but saying a lot of it's going to cost, 1 less is a pretty big deal, but it's just too varied without, maybe if it also filled your hand too. It just kind of reminds me of Fires of Zinashari, which was, you just turn your hand into the whole thing becomes complete randomness. I guess there is the flexibility that everything is a choose. So you're because there's a whole bunch of Druid of the blank in that pool, right? The Druid of the Reef, but there's also Druid of the Flame. And the good news is that a lot of those cards got buffed when they were trying to promote Twist. And they did that whole, if you remember, there was basically this wild expansion, right, that they were promoting. But in addition to that, at the same time, they'd gone back and buffed a ton of older cards. So there's some good stuff in the pool, but it's, you can't really I don't think you can build your deck around this, right? It's stronger just to build your deck around Aviana. But if you're looking for fun, you're looking for variety, sure, why not? Just, you're not going to know what you're going to get. I'd be hard pressed to say that it's probably going to be good most of the time, though.
What are your thoughts, Pylet?
Yeah, similar to them. I mean, I could see it definitely possibly as I need something different to do type card, and something that you're probably choosing off a generation in that case, but the cost one less is definitely a big thing that makes it more intriguing. But the choose one cards are all over the place. I did see we haven't talked about the other cards revealed today, but someone in chat just mentioned filling your hand with the random temporary spells from the fabled location and then replacing them is a little bit interesting. Because then it's instant value as well.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much one of those cards that you're probably never going to run in a deck, but it's going to make interesting games when you generate it. It's going to it's going to happen, and you're going to have your opponent generated against you, and they're going to generate some random choose one cards that turns a game that you had won into something you no longer have won, and you're going to be upset. But I don't. This card, these are the kind of cards that can be really fun. It's not very. It's a good cost, and it's one of those ones where maybe I think a good scenario would be when like you've already done like your big things and you only have a few cards left and they're garbage, and it's like, well, I guess this is kind of pull in case of emergency if you happen to have generated or something like that. I don't know. I think it could be interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our next card. Highborn Mentor. This is an 8 mana 6/6 battle cry. Get a 2/2 pupil. Discover a spell that costs 7 or more from the past to teach it. Now, before anyone asks, Pizza asked right away, how much does this pupil cost? So I went and asked as many people as I could, and everyone's doing things outside of being at their computer right now. So I got answers of, I think it's 1 mana, I think it's 2 mana, oh, maybe it's 3 mana. So we do not know how much the pupil costs, which is definitely a hindrance to talking about this card. However, I'm going to assume that it's probably a 2 mana card, because if the little Naga there was a 1/1, and if this is a 2/2, I would say this is probably a 2/2, right? Probably makes the most sense. Pete, so what are your thoughts on this card?
It's pretty interesting. I think that, again, like we kind of have the same question as with the last card of just like, what is the pool of spells? And in the entirety of the past, like the pool could be quite underwhelming. It does have to cost 7 or more, which I think is a little bit more beneficial. But then even then, there are cards like Crystal Cluster, and if you're casting this on turn 8, and you probably don't want to have as much mana and be able to like recur those things. But if we're saying that it's a 2 mana 2/2 that the people is going to get, being able to cast some of those cards over and over again, like being able to bounce the people and then recur those things, I think gives it a little bit more application. But I think it's another question of just like, what is the actual pool available for this card, and what really works. There's a lot of dead cards like Hydration Station. I guess Survival of the Fittest, you could hit. That's probably like the best thing that I could really think of to like hit from the past. But there's quite a bit of randomness, and especially to have to put yourself into position to pay 8 for the first part of this body, right? And then to put yourself into position for the people afterwards. Like, it's a pretty big investment, but I could see some like niche scenarios for it.
Yeah, and WorldEight, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know what this could get? This could get Drum Circle.
I sense a theme tonight.
Yeah, it just costs way too much without duplicating the little guy, right? Like the pool is actually pretty cool. Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. Like your chance to, we can't get a Hydration Station, which is nice because that's pretty much whatever for this. But I mean, like your high rolls are Convoke the Spirits, which is 8 random Druid spells, Survival of the Fittest, +4/+4 to your whole deck, Ultimate Infestation. Those are all bangers. And then after that, like there's still a lot of really good ones, like Cenarian Ward, if anyone remembers that. Cultivation, fine. So and Miracle Growth, Scales of Onyxia. There's a lot of really good ones in here, actually. So this is more promising than I thought, but if I'm spending probably like 10 mana to do this, I need to find a way to either get this one out cheap or to duplicate the effect somehow. So I think this could be really powerful, but it's how do I get play the 2/2 again? Um, I don't know, Brewmaster. That seems like a stretch though. But the pool is
Yeah.
actually really good.
Yep.
Pylet, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I mean, if we're able to build a Ramp Druid deck, if Ramp Druid is meta competitive, then I think that this is a very strong card in that. That's just a bigger question of if we can ramp up to be able to be playing this on a turn 5 instead of a turn 8.
Yeah, I mean that's my thought too. Is like normally you look at a card and if it's got 8 mana and you're like, when am I ever going to play that? It's probably Druid. So the fact that this is a Druid card, not necessarily a neutral card, is if it's a theme. I don't know what we don't have a ton of ramp right now in Druid. We have a little bit, but who knows what we're gonna get like when the rotation hits and whatnot. So this is a card that, again, I think you're gonna like generating it in the middle of a game and having it and like, okay, now I have something I can do on turn 8 where I wasn't sure what I was gonna do and get a good possible spell off of that. But it's definitely, I think it's kind of expensive to run just straight up unless there is a particular reason to. But like WorldEight was saying, there are a lot, as far as random spells go, Druid does have a lot of good 8 mana or 7 mana spells or more from the past that could potentially give you something. And it's not random, it's discover. So that narrows your ability to get something good. So I think it's got potential. We'll see. All right, let's move on to our next card. We have 5 cards today. How great is that? Druid of Regrowth. This is a 6 mana, 3/5, rewind, battle cry, cast 2 random nature spells. Pylet, what are you thinking about Druid of Regrowth?
Yeah, I mean it's a decent value card. Having rewind is helpful because that nature spell pool is normally really big in Druid. It's a pretty big stat penalty on it to where, again, it's one to where are you playing it on 6 or are you playing on a 4 makes a very big difference for how it's going to feel on that turn. But kind of depending on where our nature spell pool goes and kind of the variance in that, and if we have incentive to really do a lot of nature spell things, then I think that this is something that you can at least consider. The rewind helps a decent bit there to kind of re-roll because of the variance.
What do you think, WorldEight? You like this card?
Man, I hope they speed up that rewind animation because there are some nature spells that take a while themselves to do and then resolve. Like they've got to speed that up because this like you would maybe not even get a chance to like decide if you want to. Especially because this goes in probably like some kind of value deck, right? Like where you're trying to make a decision, like, was this the right play? I'm gathering my resources. It could be a lot of fun. It could be super powerful, but yeah, it's a little expensive, but hard. It's so hard to recommend any of these rewind cards right now. I think it takes like a minute for that thing to go. Yeah, but I mean, it is good to have rewind, right? Like this is a great example of something where you couldn't discover 2 nature spells to cast or just do it to random cards. Like this is the right fit for that kind of mechanic. So but yeah, I can't get over that animation. I'm sorry.
Well, the animation I think is fine. The little golden stuff that goes across your screen, that would be fine. But then it takes like another 3 seconds and then it replays the card and then it does the thing. I think the problem is not the animation. And my theory is, and I'm making this up as far as what I feel, but I think it takes some time to actually in the code bring the turn back and then redo it. So I think that maybe they're kind of trying to work that in because otherwise, why not just leave the card on the board and then just redo the thing? Because it's like then it's back in your hand, then it plays back out. If they just leave it where it is and then redo the effect, I think that's potentially good.
Yeah, I think it redoes the exact, like it reverses it to the exact board state, which undoes a lot of things in the game.
And remember, this is like 13-year-old code that is held together with band-aids, duct tape, and bubblegum. So hopefully they get there. But I think it's a really cool effect. And like you said, it's just a little slow. Pizza, you gonna be playing Druid of Regrowth here?
I mean, I agree with WorldEight. I think that this is an interesting card, albeit expensive. I think that there's a lot of merit to forms of like Ramp Druid. I don't think this is that bad because the pool of nature cards is like fairly reasonable to the point where like even if you do kind of wind up roping out, most druid cards are good and kind of just do stuff, right? Like even bad druid card or bad nature cards, excuse me, like at least do something. They just have like a slight detriment, like photosynthesis. Sometimes the restore health doesn't go where you want it to go. Sometimes there's a flipper friends animation or an attack that you're not going to get. But otherwise, like it's kind of just like a mini Yogg to some extent. But I definitely agree. Like 6 is a lot to like want to pay for just like a bunch of stats. You could pay 6 mana and get a bunch of stats in a different way. But it's kind of an interesting one to play. It'll definitely. I don't play much arena, but it seems like it would probably do well in your arena deck.
Oh, absolutely. And I've seen multiple times in chat that Highborn Mentor is the pupil is 2 mana. So I don't know where people are getting that from, but you know, the internet's never wrong, so we'll believe it. Yeah, this card seems fun. It's going to win you some games out of nowhere. It'll lose you some games out of nowhere. You get the rewind, which is always nice. And it's always like, especially if you get one thing you like and one thing you don't like, well, do you hit rewind? Do you not hit rewind? I really, animations aside, I really enjoy the mechanic. I have found it to be very fun. I like the dragon there, the 3 mana that draws a card from your deck and you get to rewind. It's just kind of a nice little tempo thing. And I think it's fun. I think this card is, I think we're going to see a couple of these cards brought down in cost fairly early, and like in the if we're doing buffs shortly after the release of the expansion, I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of these come down a mana, because I think if like I think this is 5 mana 3/5, I think that would be the right space for this. But I like the effect. I like the idea. It's going to always get your opponent mana buff, and it's always going to have you Moonfire your own minions. But that's how Hearthstone works, right? All right, so let's move on to our 4th card, which is probably my favorite card that we're revealing, and this is the Endangered Dodo. This is a 5 mana 5/5 beast. Taunt. Battle Cry. If you have 10 or less health, gain +5/+5 and summon a copy of this. I think this is a fantastic card for just having what if you have some kind of strategy, like if you're playing Owl Druid and you just need something to kind of hold off things for just another turn or two, this feels like it maybe be able to help with that. Plus, but it doesn't have that penalty of, if you are penalty for your opponent if you are playing Hydration Station. This does not come back as a 10/10. This comes back as a 5/5 because of the Battle Cry. So I like where they put this. I think the stats are right for this. I think the cost is right for this, and I really like the effect. So I think this card is going to, out of the cards we've seen so far, I think that this card is really going to find a home in, I would say, probably a decent amount of Druid decks that are trying to go to a late game. Pizza, am I wrong?
I think the difficult part is that you have to be at 10, right? And a lot of the time when you're in those types of positions, like the idea is that you would be able to put yourself into a spot where, you know, you're at 10, you can play this, you can play spell, you know, which gains you back life, and then you have this type of insurance for this board state. I mean, in practice, in theory, that's nice, but in practice, like rarely does it really pan out. 10 health is a lot. 10 health being an extension of your life total, but I've trouble like being confident in going into a game planning for that. If I were to like put myself into those types of positions, it would probably be like Raybo maybe, and then at least there's like some sort of action. So if you can put like another Hydration Station Raybo deck, then I think that it works alongside of with. I will say this: I do kind of wish that the quest for Hunter, since it used to be that you could just generate minions, and now it's Discover, which I think excludes it from the pool. I kind of wish that had happened and been available for this, because I think it would have been a really big high roll for it. But I'm not super confident in a constructed game like panning out for this.
I do think there's a difference between someone that's playing in 4-digit legend versus someone playing in 2-digit legend. So maybe this card will find a home more for me than it will for you.
I think it'll go great in your Greybow deck.
That's fair. Pylet, what are your thoughts on this deck?
Yeah, I really like the concept of this card. It definitely is something to where it has a little bit of a niche place, but if it finds a place, it's a very powerful effect. If we get, especially with the Druid being a class that typically has access to armor, it kind of gives you some opportunities to, and it's also been a class that has access to healing, to where, if we have something to where you're taking a beating early game, you get this down and stabilized behind it, that's a really, really powerful turn. It's just there's a few ifs there that we'll have to see, but I think 5 mana for 2020 is too much to ignore, and people will find a way and a reason to use this card somehow.
Fair enough. WorldEight, any thoughts?
I mean, this card's doing a lot of things that I like. It's duplicating itself. It's got buffs on itself. It's a big pile of stats. Just the very difficult condition for the kind of deck, that I want to play, which is like, I want to slam this on 5, put this on curve in the game, but like, it's almost impossible to do that. Like, what are you going to do? Sparkling File your own face? I don't know. I think this could be a really powerful, obnoxious card, even outside of a defensive deck. But if you did, you'd want to build around it. But Druid doesn't really have that as a class theme, so this Dodo might come and go without anyone really noticing. Although it does have a lot of text things that things on the text that I like.
That's fair. How do we feel if you have it in a deck and you just drop it on? I mean, it passes the vanilla test, right? 5 mana, 5/5 with taunt.
Yeah, it's fine. There's much better things to do. I mean, we're not playing
It's
stuff
fair.
like Evergreen Stag. Evergreen Stag is like leagues better than this, and that's not seeing any play.
That's fair. All right, so we have, I believe, one more card, and that is Ebb and Flow. This is a 2-mana common spell. Deal 3 damage. If you play a minion while holding this, gain 5 armor. This seems like just a very solid anti-aggro tool. 2 mana, deal 3 damage, gain 5 armor. You're always going to probably play minions. I think this is just a very solid card. I think out of all the cards we see, this probably you'll find the home in the most decks. And you're also going to be very happy to generate it. WorldEight, you got thoughts on this one?
Oh yeah, I think this one's a slam dunk. This is a really good card. A few things going on here. So first of all, it goes face. That's great. That opens up a lot of possibilities for a lot of decks. Just the fact that you can do damage. Like, we're playing Wrath in some decks, like Imbue Druid, right? Like, if anyone's playing that, they're very happy with this card, right? And it's a way to do some face damage, stabilize. A deck actually can have a challenge stabilizing. It goes really well in any kind of ramping deck, right? Like, you play your Tortelian Traveler on 3, and this thing's active. Like, that's a very reasonable play for an early minion or a Creature of Madness or whatever, if you're not doing anything with like Oaken Summons. So pretty easy to activate, and it's a lot of armor. But it's also fine in any kind of aggro deck. Like, we've seen cards like Plague Strike be really good before, which is like, I am going to remove your board and kind of like get ahead on this like race to knock each other out. So I think this is just like a great card for like a lot of different Druid decks.
Fair enough. Pizza, are you going to ebb with this card, or are you going to flow with this card?
I like this card. I mean, it's very to the point. Doesn't have any requirements for the damage, so it gets to go face, which 2 mana, deal 3 in a lot of spots you're going to be pretty content with. and the requirement alongside of gaining armor is a pretty easily achieved bonus. It's not like it needs to be a specific type of minion. I think this is fine. It's also a nature spell, so like if you wind up getting Horn of Plenty, it gives you a lot of flexibility alongside of that.
Pylet, I know this card is right up your alley.
Yeah, this is just a very solid, generically good card. To where it just feels like a Druid deck card, because Druid is going to play minions. They're going to be happy to pay 2 to control the board, control face, gain some armor. It checks so many boxes for any Druid deck, I think, that this is just going to be a card that we see a lot of over the next 16 months.
And I think even if you have to play it without the armor gain, it still feels fine. 2 mana, remove something. You're not going to complain. And it does go face. So this is another thing that can go in like an Owl Druid try and just kind of like maybe give you an extra burn at the end if you don't end up using it for removal. So overall, I think it's a solid card. All right, so I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear this, but we got so there are other Druid cards to reveal, and our friend Silent Nick got to review some, and he actually sent us a video to talk about his reveal. So we're going to take a look at that real quick. And let's see if hold on. I just gotta tweak this here. All right. Here we go.
Ciao Tito, come stai? I heard you're doing a Druid reveal too. So I was thinking, what about a recap of the cards I revealed here today? How you will enjoy it. So have fun with your card reveal.
Krona, Keeper of Eons. Don't, Buttercry, set the cost of the bottom 5 cards of your deck to 1 point of mana. Waste 1 point of mana.
Bring that back. All right, so we got first legendary. Were you able to hear Nick, by the way?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So we have a 6 mana 4/7 Krona, Keeper of the Eons, legendary. Taunt, Battlecry, set the cost of your bottom 5 cards of your deck to 1. I think that I'm already thinking about Wild Dredge stuff with this card. That seems like that's really, really solid. What are your thoughts on this card there, Pizza?
I guess it depends on the construction of your deck in a lot of spots. I'm not a wild player, so it would be difficult for me to comment, but discounting a bunch of stuff, it's not difficult to find. It's not difficult to shuffle or have access to like additional minions in a Druid deck. It's as simple as playing a toy chest or playing a reforestation to have access to that, and also Story of Barnabas and stuff. Yeah, I mean, being able to discount it is okay. It has taunt, so it protects itself, which is one of my biggest qualifiers for cards. If a card's capable of doing something and keeping the game going, then I think it's pretty reasonable.
And it can get you, Zoran chat, a 1 mana 20/20 of stats if you happen to pull the dodo and your health is less than 10.
True.
So, WorldEight, are you excited for Corona?
I think this card is probably is very, very strong. This card may be an oops. Because like right away people are like, okay, well, you play your Tortilian Traveler, you got 2 Oaken summons, and you can slam this on curve pretty much almost every game on almost very reliably. And it's not just minions too, right? It's spells. So just any kind of churning through your deck to get those bottom 5 is great, right? Like Pizza was saying, there's tutors for things like Story Barnabas. Your travelers can pull other taunts that suddenly have low costs, stuff like that. Yeah, and it's got a really good stat line for what it's doing. Little tricky to maybe build your deck around if you feel like you're never going to find it, but there are basically 4 tutors in the format for it right now, so very likely to see quite a bit of play.
How excited are you for a 1 mana Gigasaur?
Yeah, I think that this card is solid. I'm not as scared of this as something like a low, where I don't feel like it's going to be as immediately busted. And we also got a lot of interesting support tools with it, with the other cards that we'll see in the reveal dealing with stuff on the bottom of the deck. It also makes timeless causality, the 2-mana 3/2 neutral or battle cry reverse the order of your deck. That card makes a lot more sense now as something that we could possibly do with this. I don't know if you're wanting to, but if you're just desperate for getting to those cards that you discounted, you can get to them. So I really like the prospects of this card. It brings up some interesting deck building.
I like this card, but I also have the fear that this is going to be one of those cards that's so good that you see it come down and you're just like, oh great, here we go. So I hope it finds a middle ground. I think the art is cool. I think the concept is cool. And I also think it's kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, you're going to be able to do some things in wild with this particular. I bet you there's some people drooling about that with the ability to dredge. All right, so let's look at our next one.
Deck to 1 point of mana. Way shaping. Discover a card from your deck. The others get put on the bottom.
Okay, let's bring that back. All right. So, WorldEight, Wave Shaping. Discover 1 mana, discover a card from your deck. The others get put on the bottom. How are we liking this card?
Oh, this is basically tracking, right? So it's it's people sometimes got hung up on something like fracking different card, right? Like that was destroying cards in the bottom of your deck. I don't usually play games that go long enough that I see all the cards in my deck. But even if you do, like that, what you find what you want immediately, right? And it does play nice with the legendary, where you can kind of purposely put the big stuff on the bottom, and then that gets discounted later. All these cards are really crying for aquatic form, any kind of dredge. But this is just kind of like a solid card. You could put this as your one for anything. I think we're playing, filling in the one with whatever we want for Elise purposes for Druid. So this would be probably a reasonable replacement to discover, right? So much better than just draw a random card.
And I think it gives you a lot of flexibility, right? If you're playing against something in aggro deck, you can discover something that you need to get something right now. And if you're playing the long game against something control or combo, you can do the thing where you put it at the bottom of your deck to try to. There are ways you can figure out what to do with it. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things here. Pylet, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, similar to WorldEight, I mean, it's tracking with additional information. Because now the cards that you're not taking, they're guaranteed to be on the bottom of the deck, and you're not going to see that copy of them anytime soon. And anytime you have additional information in card games, it's good, even if it's information you don't want. Maybe you wanted those cards also, and now they're stuck at the bottom. But now you at least know that you're not going to get them, and that helps you game plan.
I wonder if you're ever taking the card that you don't want at the bottom, and it's like, oh, I don't really want this card in my hand, but I want the other cards at the bottom because I want to get them for cheaper. Mm-hmm. Pizza, will you be wave shaping?
I think it will. This actually is like probably my personal favorite of the ones that we've seen so far. It's just kind of like the way that I really like to play the game. Like you get to discover and you get to do a thing, but underneath the card, you're also, like Pylet said, you're putting cards on the bottom, which you're not going to be seeing in the span of a game, which allows you some manipulation of how your deck operates. You can play into the legendary and you can discount them, but also you're being a lot more proactive about the cycling through your deck. This is something I greatly enjoy doing.
All right, let's take a look at the Pylet. Did I already ask you about this? Yeah, we already talked to you about this, right?
All bottom. Right. Contingency. Draw the bottom 2 cards from your deck.
All right, well, that seems pretty solid with everything that we're doing right now. 3 mana, get a 1 mana minion or whatever, 1 mana Gigasaur, 1 mana whatever. This is all coming together. I think with these cards, it's a nice. We've had conversations in the past about how packages maybe either hit or miss for a deck, and if like you have a package, if there's too many cards in that package, then maybe like it feels like your class didn't hit. I don't know how this couldn't. This feels too good. So I think contingency is a good card, and I think the package here is going to be very solid, and Druid is going to be pretty good. Pizza, what's your contingency plan?
I think contingency is probably fine because on the surface it's kind of it's just arcane intellect.
Yep.
The extra steps on top of it, I think, are what ultimately like puts it over the top, and I'm a little bit curious about how that will wind up playing out for the deck constructing with all of these cards. Because this could wind up being like a very solid 30th card, but it's still like going to be the 30th card in your deck, and you need to have all those other components to make this that like absurd circumstance. But I mean 3-mana draw 2 is not bad. So
Pylet, you excited for your contingency plan here?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Pizza said. If it's a deck that would consider a card like, AI, then you play it and you have a little bit of, potential upside with it. Because if you're just trying to draw 2 cards, you really don't care if they come off the top or the bottom. If you're manipulated by the deck, then this is really good.
Yeah, fair. And there's a lot of cards like I'm seeing in chat right now. Maybe you can get a 1-mana low. Maybe get a 1-mana ceaseless turn 6. So there's some interesting things you could be doing here. WorldEight, what's your contingency here?
Yeah. I mean, this goes into bottom Druid or whatever we're calling it. It's fine. It'll be good. It's part of the package. It's kind of like a low bearing card where it's there and it kind of have to run with the package. I think outside of it, it's fine-ish, but I don't think it'll see play if we're not playing stuff like Ungora Portal and such. It's pretty much in that package, and it'll be a decent card in it. It's pretty much for it was printed and says for what it is. It's for that specifically for the legendary. But like I said, pretty easy to tutor the legendary, so probably see a lot of play.
And for those wondering, when we're talking about things like bottom and package, we are not Blizzlet. So that's a different podcast.
Your deck. Calderate, a cultivator, Battlecry, discover 2 beasts, put them on the bottom of your deck, give them +5/+5.
All right. Pizza, how are we liking the cultivator here? 3-mana, 3/4, Battlecry, discover 2 beasts, put them in the bottom of your deck with +5/+5.
I'm passes the spider tank test. Good for tempo. What is the pool for Druid Beasts? I guess is the real question. Especially because you have access to the bottom of your deck. I don't think that's like a very difficult qualifier from what we've seen with the past couple of cards. So there's definitely synergy. There are definitely good beasts. Even if the big thing that like kind of stands out to me about this card is that even if you don't have those immediate cards, there are still cards that will shuffle your deck and then give you a little bit more life to just naturally draw whatever you get. Like Vibrant Squirrel is like probably a decent hit because you get to just play it. I mean, it's fine. I think that the question becomes like which beast you're gonna get, but +5/+5 is nothing to scoff at. Like it's fine.
If you have less than 10 health, you might have a 30/30 for 1 mana. Although you're probably still going to be extinct after that. WorldEight, how excited are you for this card?
Oh, I don't know if I'm living in magical Christmas Dodo land. But the beast pool is notoriously meh, right? Like we have a whole bunch of beast cards for Druid and nothing really tying them together. And you can kind of see this, like if you ever play with Raptor Heralds, you're immediately like, this beast has a dark gift, but it's still like, I don't care. So it's +5/+5 is pretty big, but generally like deck buffing cards have to be really over the top, right? Like Tito's is close to your heart, but like you can never get Black Rock and Roll to work, right? Like it's deck buffing cards need a very high caliber of card for it to work. And as much as I love beasts and as much as I love buffing them, I find it really hard to see this card seeing play. I mean, specifically it's supposed to be going with the spell, but again, it's like if you didn't have that Oaken Summons angle that I was talking about for finding the legendary, this would be more motivating, but it's, I don't know, you really have to find beasts that have like taunt or something. I don't know, it's tricky, right? So it's hard to navigate this one, but I honestly don't really see it.
And I think Pylet and WorldEight, you guys didn't play Hearthstone back when but I think Pizza, you probably remember every expansion was like, is this the expansion that Beast Druid is going to be a thing?
Yeah.
and
Mysteriously
it
never was.
Yeah.
5.
Beast Druid, I'm going back to this argument. Pylet and I had this argument last time. Beast Druid is one of my favorite decks.
Yes.
I started playing in Fractured and Altered Valley, and Beast Druid was a tier 1 deck, and I stomped tons of Ramp Druids for like the first 4 months of playing the game, right? Like I remember playing lots of Matriarchs and Umbra Owls. Beast Druid was a legitimate deck. You cannot take that away from me.
Sure, but that was after like 8 years of them giving us Beast Druid cards that never made it there. So eventually it had like a 2 weeks in the sun, but
it's more than 2 weeks. Composting was also a really good card. Composting
was a horrible
very,
card.
very good. We also had the Guardian Animals or whatever the dual class spell was from Scholomance with the 5 or more cost beast. So that was the thing for a while with Ramp. I will say I feel like this is an interesting card to evaluate because you can do a little bit of finagling and stuff with what you're doing, because like WorldEight, you mentioned Oaken Summons. If we're running that on our deck, we can potentially, discover stuff cheap that we're tutoring it out with, and getting that, buff. We have the other cards that kind of play around with the bottom of the deck, and these types of cards normally don't hit, but +5/+5 is really intriguing. That's a lot more of a stat buff than we normally see on cards like this. We've seen plenty of like +2/+2 or just a little bit of stat bumps. That's a pretty significant bump when it's not changing the cost, but your cost is trying to find it. I think that if you can consistently get it, then this is a really powerful card. That's the biggest question mark for me.
Now, would we be more or less interested in this card if it was discover 2 beasts from the past, like some of these cards have been?
Oh, it's worse. Beasts from the past are awful. The beasts right now are not great, but the beasts from the past are real garbage. I mean, like there's a zombies card, right? Like, and if I haven't played with zombies in a while, you discover one standard one and one wild one, and the wild pool is just incredibly awful. Yeah, it'd be worse if it was from the past.
The neutral beast pool is just all over the place normally. That's where it gets really tricky.
All right, fair. See what else Nick has to say.
5.
He's silent. Great. All right. So we did have a few more cards to talk about for Druid, and this one took me a minute to wrap my head around. So this is a 5-mana 5/5 legendary Lady Azhara, Fabled. And so the Fabled is you get a Zinashari and a Well of Eternity location, and they get thrown into your deck. And one of them gets destroyed. It's weird. So when you play her, you choose to either get one or destroy one. And I don't know how that works. I think you want to play one, use it, then play Lady Azhara, and then destroy the one that's already been used, and then use the other one. So maybe you can still get all the full value out of them if you do it in a particular order. But you also get these power cards. So the Well of Eternity is fill your hand with random temporary spells, and Zinashari is summon a copy of a friendly minion. And if you power Zinashari, you get summon a copy of a friendly minion with the stats doubled. And if you power the Well, you get fill your hand with random temporary spells they cast twice. There's a lot going on here. Pizza, is there enough going on where we're playing these cards?
I do like like filling my hand with temporary spells, I guess, because it's also going to include not druid spells. It's a lot to like, because you have to play the 5/5, and then you have to find the location, right? Like that's a lot to ask for. We have been talking a lot about like how easily you can kind of like lead through your deck and manipulate and search for things. So I think it's probably meritable to try, but like that turn 5, like for example, like Elise probably gives you a similar result of summon a copy, but like the immediacy of that is the real difference maker. That's what makes Elise so strong, right? Having to find the location after the fact does seem like it's going to be a pretty big detriment. But the end result of like being buffed after you've like gone through everything and done everything, especially like if you look at the spell one, when that's empowered, it casts twice, which I think is pretty okay. But like you have to play the 5/5, you have to find the thing, you have to generate random stuff, and then the random stuff has to be good, right? Like that's a lot of things that are happening there.
All right, fair. WorldEight, are you looking forward to this card?
I think there's a little bit of confusion here. So when you put her in the deck, you're putting her in the deck, and the Fabled is the 2 locations.
Correct.
So you could just draw Zinajari, slam it on 4, and you could ignore the other 2 cards. Like you never have to like play the Well of Eternity. Or you want to play the Well of Eternity, you just play it. You could ignore Zinajari, you can ignore the Legendary. It's 3 cards that go in your deck. And when you play her, what she's going to do is she's going to nuke the other location. She's going to empower one location and then nuke the other one. So, you know, what's one of the ideas is floating around is like, okay, just play as an Owl Druid, right? Like, because all I care about is the copy. And, you know, I don't, you know, maybe I get some use out of Well of Eternity along the way, right? Like, so that's kind of the consideration is, are either of these locations good independently? And I'd say, yeah, these, like, either of these are worth building around. They're both kind of pretty solid locations. Especially summoning a copy, doubling it, like that's the kind of thing that I like to do, right? Like that could be a huge stat bomb when you lead up to something. But Pizza, like you're saying, like filling your hand with random temporary stuff, like that might just be worth a 4 mana location. I don't know. You could speak more to that. But especially if you cast double, like you could really, and you get 3 charges out of that. That's a lot of like potentially really high value. Like when you get, I don't know, 5 cards to pick from. You know, it depends on what your hand size is, but I don't know. I really like this package of Fabled. It's worth building around. But yeah, I've definitely already seen a lot of ideas floating around with what can we do with Zinashari specifically. Because you can copy like a charging Templar, for example, pretty easily. Things like that. So yeah, I think I see a lot of potential for her.
Yeah, and I like that you can, especially if you have 3 charges, you're gonna have probably burn through all your cards, and then you're gonna have a full hand to get many choices for your temporary spells, and that's again going to go good in like an Owl Druid of some kind or something like that when you're out of resources. But my goal before the end of the expansion, before rotation in April, is to get a 15/15 Dodo on the board and then copy it to make it a 30/30, and then use the location from Elise to get 2 30/30s and have like a bazillion stats on board for like nothing. So we're gonna do that at least once. Pylet, how you liking these cards?
I really like this card. It's so hard to evaluate the power level of this card, but I love you have so many choices and you just have options with all of this, you know, and you can really decide based on how the game plan is going. You can hard mulligan for one of the locations if you think you're going to need it. You can decide this location doesn't do anything in this matchup and just blow it up and empower the other one. You can make sure you get the full value. I really like the amount of choices that the player piloting this deck gets because of these cards. And it's so tricky to evaluate where exactly that's going to fall, but it's something that any sort of druid that is slower is going to look at these cards, I think, because there's just so much that you can do with them.
Was there any pun intended there with the piling of the
No.
decks? Fair.
So, yeah, I
Right.
really like this stuff.
So, all right. So that brings us to the end of Druid. Now we have other cards to talk about. We have 4 other classes. We're going to show all the cards. We're not going to talk about every single card because otherwise we'll be here for like a million years. But we're here to just, so we'll just kind of talk about what we're excited about, maybe what we're not interested in and whatnot, and go from there. So our first class we have is Death Knight. And WorldEight, why don't you get us started with Death Knight? What are your thoughts here?
All right, so I'm immediately annoyed that they printed Ice Block for Death Knight. I'm just gonna put that out there. Why'd they do that? just add 20 health to any grindy blood control Death Knight. That's exactly what I want in my game.
But at least you can still kill them on the turn. You can trigger the death rattle.
It's
and then
true.
Still kill them
They're
on the
not
same turn with your
immune.
30 dodos.
It's true. I'm pretty well versed in Wild to have like 100 attack on the board and not kill them. So that's obviously very powerful. But this is the one Fabled card that I'm kind of meh on. It seems pretty good. Again, it's one of those things that's hard to evaluate how good Bonswami is. Seems pretty reasonable, but you really want to get Talami first down, and so the ordering is a little tricky. But it seems like it's a pretty solid card. It'll probably go in a whole bunch of decks. The other card that I think is really good is Time Stop. Time Stop's just kind of like one of those like really good solid cards like we were talking about for the Druid one. It's doing a lot of stuff. It goes face. I like to see these kind of cards. So, obviously the legendaries are pretty captivating, but I think Time Stop we'll see a lot of play if we see that any kind of frost aggressive deck.
Pizza, what are your thoughts?
I think the card that I'm most excited about in this pool is probably, I guess, Blood Draw. I think that having access to that type of flexibility and being able to use your life as a resource is something that you're always kind of like inching for, especially with leeched decks. I'm also not like that enthusiastic about Husk being included into the format, but I think it'll probably like wind up being a lot worse than Ice Block was. I think that in a lot of spots right now, especially, if you were going to die once, like you're probably going to die again. And I do think that there's a lot of like niche scenarios, like, or rather, I think that you are going to get application out of getting another life, but I think it'll be a lot more difficult than most players are capable of like really achieving. And I think that that's something that like is going to surprise like quite a few people. But being able to generate stuff and being able to use your health to pay for it, I'm a pretty big fan of.
Pylet, you ready to play a little more Death Knight?
Possibly. I agree. Blood Draw is, I think, the top card here out of the set. Chrono Chiller is the card that I'm going to bait myself with because I did the same thing in Lorcana. There's a very similar card that costs 4. It's like a 6/6 that quests for a ton, but you skip your draw at the start of the turn. So it's a lot of stats. It won't be good, but it'll be really funny to hit people with the first day of the expansion and then delete the deck. I'm not as scared of Husk as I think most people are. Maybe that's my bad judgment. But the thing that I'm looking at also is if you play this and you're expecting those corpses to save you, then that blocks your own corpse explosion. That blocks your own, Maladar into something expensive if you're needing those corpses to also give you that second life. So unless we're, sitting on 40 corpses or whatever, then it does get tricky to kind of manage those numbers unless we're leaning more heavily into like undead runes and we're playing a bunch of token stuff. So there's probably a place for it, but I'm a little bit less worried about it in what we sliding into something like we currently see with the Leech Death Knight, just because they're wanting to kind of spend their corpses on things to keep control rather than trying to not die because of it. So I think that helps balance things out a little bit.
So even if like you were down to like 17 max health, it should bring you back to 20, right? If you have the corpses. But yeah, absolutely. I think you're not going to see this be like, yeah, I think you're not going to see this as your person is resurrecting to 20 health. I think this is going to be something where you resurrect to, it wipes out your corpses. And if you're spending corpses in any deck that you're playing, it's going to bring you back with like 3 health or 5 health, or the occasional is going to be like, well, they have 35 health. What am I going to do now? Because they didn't spend all their corpses. They're waiting. But I don't think it's going to be, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be as bad as people are reading it into. I think it's going to be one of those things where you play this card and you're like, all right, I get the death rattle, and someone punches you and then they punch you again. And yeah. Okay. So they get to kill you twice in the same turn. And it was like, well, fine. What was the point of that? And I think this would go away. I like Memorandum Manifest. I think that could be interesting. I don't know what we do with it yet. I don't know if Quest was good, maybe this could be good. I don't know if we can do it with that card that spends corpses and gets bigger depending on how many corpses you spend, 10, 20, or 30. Those are all too slow. But I'm sure there's something in Memorandum Manifest that we could probably make broken. I don't know what it is, but I think it's out there. And I like the fact that it only does undead. So it's not going to be like, the reciprocal thing of resurrecting your opponent's highest minion at the same time or whatever, most of the time, unless it's a mirror. So I don't know. I think these cards are all pretty interesting. Time Stop just feels solid. Deal 3 damage, freeze 2 enemy minions. That just feels like a very good anti-aggro tool, or even just kind of like a late game. I need another turn to just survive to get to my thing and not let them do their thing. So I think there's a lot of fun to be had here. Yeah. No. Pizza, have you already weighed in? You haven't weighed on this yet, right? So what are your thoughts on Death Knight? You have? Okay.
Yes.
All right, sorry. Let's go ahead and move on to the next class then. And we have Hunter. Our boy CDC got to comment on some of these things. So congratulations to DC for having a say in there. WorldEight, how are we liking the Hunter here?
Empty Hand Hunter. Interesting thing here. So just first of all, I find it like there's not that many like spoon-fed packages this set. Like I feel like last set, which was like, oh, you got a quest, here are all the cards, and they're all related to quest. Oh, we have Imbue set, here are a whole bunch of Imbue related cards. And now we've got a very slight package here, right? Death Knight was even less so of having a package, but here we're got the suggestion, hey, dump your hand so that you can draw stuff with Arrow Retriever. Dump your hand so that you can Fletcher or get an infinite banana, which is hilarious. So there's some cards in here that I like. I think Sylvanas, the Fabled, she seemed pretty solid for any kind of slower hunter deck. Just good value out of any of the 3 rangers there. To play them on curve, you're pretty happy. Some are better than others, but it's just a reasonable Fabled package to put in any deck. It might even have a place in something like Beast Hunter because it just has awful 3 drops, and honestly, they might be worth it just because the 3 drops in that deck are so bad. But one of my favorite cards is like Arrow Retriever, right? Like I love dump my hand, draw more cards, put pressure on the board kind of things. And like I mentioned, the Fletcher can be pretty good too, and the Precise Shot, that's just like a lot of damage for any kind of Face Hunter deck if we have one. 5 damage for 2 is a lot. If you play Fletcher on 1, you click immediately. Then you play another card, you click on 2, you click on 3. You've done 6 damage with this one card. So all just like great Face Hunter cards. I don't really care for much of the other stuff, even though I loved like hand buff Hunter, like Stalker's way too slow. And the random beast for Wormhole, it's beast, kind of questionable. Yeah, and I think Silver Moon is just like, it's so bad. I really don't like that one at all. But I'm pretty optimistic about half the hunter cards at least.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way about the location. I'm not overly enthused with it. Wormhole seems okay. I don't think it's something you're going to run in your deck, but I think it's something that you're not going to, again, be fine to generate. And maybe if you get it early, um, I already feel anxious about playing this deck with the no cards because I hate like having no cards and then like what am I going to do? And it just feels like a deck that's going to build upon my anxiety that I'm not going to want to. I'm just going to get too frustrated with it. Infinite Banana seems really interesting. Um, you know, depends on you want to get rid of your hand anyway, so it seems like this is going to be pretty easy to get on board. And then whenever you have extra mana in a play or whatever, you're going to be able to just dump it onto a minion. So I wouldn't be surprised if that sees more play than I think we'd expect. Ticking Time Bomb seems solid. Destroy random enemy minion for 2 mana for 1 man. That seems good as well for an early game. And all people were thinking that secrets might be leaving standard, but I think we just got proof that they're not because this one's here for the next year and a half. So if they're going to have one secret, you can't just have one secret. Otherwise, it's not a secret. So I'm assuming that maybe we'll see more secret support in the future. I don't think we've seen mage yet, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if we see another mage secret as well. Pylet, I know you're going to be frustrated when I'm playing no hand hunter at some point, but what are your thoughts on this hunter set?
Oh, I won't be frustrated because I'm pretty sure that I'm playing it also. I am all for this aggressive face hunter deck here, and similar to WorldEight, as WorldEight said, we have definitely cards that are meant to go together, but they're not, pigeonholed into where you have to play all of them together. Arrow Retriever, you don't have to be playing the other, get rid of your hand or have so few cards in your hand. That just goes in an aggressive hunter because you're going to run out of cards in hunter most of the time, and that's just draw. And that's kind of why I've shied away from the aggressive hunter for the past year. I really like the deck, I like the play style, but I've hated the draw package that hunter has had. It's just felt awful, and I don't like playing decks like that, and that solves most of that problem very quickly. And we also still have enough stuff to where you can generate some value to where you toss in a couple of those, you toss in Patchwork Pals, and now you've got a handful of cards that either draw or give you stuff to do after you've thrown everything away or played it. Really excited for that. Epoch, I feel like might have a place if we get like a full hand buff, kind of like how we had like Don't Feed the Animals back in Darkmoon Faire that buffed everything in your hand. If we go that rather than single minion buff for hunter, then I think that becomes more intriguing, but right now we don't have that. So it's competing with too many other cards that right now are better. Untimely Death, I really like that as a secret. Just a guaranteed minion on board once you have that in play, and just having that very awkward of you kill it, I bring it back, now what are you going to do, and just kind of putting your opponent in an awkward spot. I really like that as an option for hunter, especially with what the rest of their secret package is. It really makes your opponent play around a lot of different things.
Yeah, Untimely Death feels like it has some interesting just synergy with Ticking Time Bomb, right? Like, so they're not going to want to clear it because then they're going to get it. You're going to get it back again, but then it's going to affect maybe how they decide to make the next turns and whatnot. Now, Pizza, typically, I believe Hunter doesn't usually see a whole lot of play at High Legend. So, is No Hands Hunter going to find its way into High Legend, or?
I think it finds its time when people are ready. A lot of it is about maximizing the opportunity versus mid-range decks. And a lot of the downside and why you don't really see it as much is because it kind of just falls on its face a lot of the time. And I think the Fletcher here actually answers a lot of those problems of just like giving you a decent starting point. Like a 1-mana 1/3 is a very, very good stat line for the early game, and it allows you those opportunities to scale into weapons, into locations, and allows you to like maintain a little bit more presence. And I think that that's like what's most important. So I'm very excited to see how Hunter will interact with the Fletcher. My thought is that the card that we're probably going to see the most is Untimely Death because of Observer of Mysteries. And for a very long time, I've been on the fence about Observer Mysteries. So I'm actually curious because of the immediacy of the secret, whether or not this like puts Observer Mysteries over the edge and starts to see play in classes outside of Rogue. But I think I mean, everybody kind of said it. The fact that these are all individually decent cards allows them for a lot more application, and I'm a really big fan of that happening.
Are you excited about the Ranger General?
Sylvanas? Yeah,
Yes.
I think that 3 is a really good stat line. I'm notoriously really bad at drawing Niall, so an extra 3 drop would be fantastic for me.
All right, fantastic. Does Observer Mysteries rotate, or is that in for another year?
From Whizbang's workshop?
Oh, okay.
Pretty sure it rotates.
Fair enough.
I'm not sure what set, but I'm pretty sure we've seen it for long enough.
I think so, but sometimes you see a card, you're like, this card we've seen forever, and it's like, oh wait, we've only had it for 2 expansions. All right, so Paladin. Paladin's got some interesting cards. Pylet, why don't you start us off on this one?
Yeah, so a lot of mech stuff, a lot of, similar to like what we talked about with some of the Druid cards, to where we get some very notoriously slow effects, but with higher stat buffs than what we've seen before. Like, a 3 mana spell to discover a Paladin mech from the past, but it gets +5/+5. A 4 mana 2/1 Divine Shield that Death Rattle summons a 7/7 with Divine Shield. So a lot of stuff that we would typically kind of write off, but I think have kind of pushed those secondary stats enough to at least let you consider them. I think the card that stands out most to me from this set is the location, Nomergon. Right now, out of the locations that we've seen, I think this is by far the best one. Just one, it's cheap enough that you can play it very easily, and the way that it scales through, I think, is a lot more conducive to the decks I would play it in, to where the first one is give a minion +2/+1. Second one also gives it Death Rattle, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. The third one also gives it Divine Shield, so it keeps adding on to those. And once you can get the first one activated, then it's really easy to kind of start building that and really putting some awkward pressure on your opponent. So really, really like that. The mech stuff I'm not quite sure about, but there's enough intrigue there to kind of look at them at least.
So Pizza, for you, I'm curious on, like, again, Paladin's another one of those, unless it's absolutely broken, I don't think you see it a lot at High Legend, but is the Fins Beyond Time a card that you think is going to create some interesting decisions in a game about what you're going to keep in your opening hand and play it later? And what are your thoughts on like Aura Paladin?
Will you like take a big consideration in your mulligan? I mean, I think the card is just good no matter what. I mean, having extra cards is pretty okay, especially in a lot of the archetypes where we can see for Paladin so far. Right, a lot of the time with Paladin, like if you're, we'll just start with Murlocs. Like a lot of the time with Murlocs, you're going to empty your hand pretty well because you're looking to get everything into play and then start buffing the quest. If you wind up hitting this along the way, you might have to have some sort of consideration the turn that you draw it. Like you'll start to think, okay, well, when am I casting this to maximize the value from refill? But I think it's, I think it's just good. I don't think it's the type of thing that I'm going to be upset about. It's got a good stat line. It's 2 mana, 2/3 Murloc. It's good in most like tempo Paladin decks that you're going to run into. I think one of the biggest things is that aggro Paladin. I think aggro Paladin, and WorldEight can probably comment on this because he's played a ton more than I have, is probably better than Murloc Paladin just because of how sustainable earlier it is, right? Once Murloc Paladin gets to the 6 mana 6/3, I think that's like the break point. But I think that aggro Paladin is much better at scaling into turn 4 with the auras, and I think that's like probably the more important part for Paladin. But I think in both scenarios, Fins Beyond Time like gives you refill that you would want.
Yeah, your thoughts on any other cards?
I do like the location. I do think that the fact that there's no, like, generally with the other locations, there's some sort of like random drawback, but this is just buff your dude and then continue doing it, and then buff your dude a better way. I do think it's funny that they snuck in Shielded Minibot as a 2-mana 2/1 this time. I like that card a lot. I wonder where it could slot in, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. But yeah, I think this is fine. With the exception of like the 8-drop, I think that everything is like pretty reasonable.
WorldEight, what are your thoughts here?
Well, to say I play more aggro paladin, the pizza is probably like, well, I've played more than one game.
I think I've played at least one game of Aggro Paladin.
Okay, 2 games, 2 games. Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'm gonna be contrary here and say I think Finn's Beyond Time isn't that great. But it's also because I played a whole bunch of Starlight Whelp. And I like Starlight Whelp. Like I thought that was like an underrated card, which you got a random card from your starting hand back into you just added it. And it has a pretty aggressive stat line. Yeah, the Finn's Beyond Time, like you have more choice. But you do have this like 2-mana overhead for any of the cards that you started with. So you're not gonna be able to like dump your hand, right? Like you still have to basically only probably get a chance to play 1 or 2 cards. So really interesting effect. I'm actually not that optimistic about it. Otherwise, I think Aura Paladin is kind of cool. But yeah, like the payoff is the 8 drop, and the question is, if I play the 8-drop, do I win the game? And yeah, if I build all of the auras, yeah, it might solidify everything. The locate that's a questionable one. That's one where you need to like be playing like the coin generators from the tourism to like really, you want to slam it on 6, right? Like putting on an 8, it's whatever, but if you get it down on 6, it's probably pretty good. Location's good. It's it's fine. I really liked Castle Kennels from Nathria. I thought that card was a little underrated, which was pretty similar. It was just a 2-mana location, click 3 times to attack every time. Good for most decks. I think there were some comparisons to like Cathedral of Atonement, but it doesn't replace itself, pretty importantly. But yeah, it'll give you three good clicks. And I think what's also kind of interesting for the Aura deck that I was just looking at these cards and reviewing is that Manifest Timeways is basically Prison Breaker. Prison Breaker was a very good card. And Timeways goes face. So I don't know. Might be worth keeping an eye on for that one, because it's something where we can very reliably find our auras if we play the Draenei, the 2/3. And so we can, and they stick around for 3 turns, right? So except for Resistance Aura, but pretty reliably that we can possibly do like a big swing with the Timeways. So that might see play in something like Aggro Paladin, which doesn't have a great top end. And sometimes you play Crusader Aura and then you're like, well, that wasn't enough. But then this could be like, well, I'm going to blow up my opponent's whole board. That might make it enough. But I think the Aura Paladin is definitely a package that's worth considering if we specifically feel like we can turbo into Gelbin, and that's better than what we're already doing. Which is not clear. But it's a bunch of solid cards, so I'm happy with them.
Yeah, and I was going to actually ask you about this, if this finds its way into Aggro Paladin, the Manifest Timeways, because that just seems like you're going to get that Crusader Aura down, and maybe you just need a little extra oomph to get through whatever they're going to do, clear some leeches so your board can survive and just keep on going or whatever. So that's interesting.
Well, one idea that someone actually floated was basically you play the 2-drop Murloc that draws a spell from your deck and it plays it, and then the only spell you play is Resistance Aura. So that might be kind of spicy. So you have two auras that you could slam with this.
And then you drop Customs Enforcer and they can't play anything, right?
Hey, I brought that to FTQ. It was pretty good. Customs Enforcers did a lot of work.
Yeah, that was called a callback.
Yeah.
All right. So Pylet, what are your thoughts on Priest here? Is Wicked good happy?
I need to take a closer look because these came out on a day that I was really busy. But I know that this is a set that I was looking through. I'm interested in the health buff cards mainly because it's an archetype that I always get suckered by. So I'm going to play it. That's a guarantee. It's probably not going to be good enough, but I'm going to play it and get totally baited again by it. But there's a decent variety of effects and kind of things to possibly do with these that are different than what we've seen before, I think. I'm gonna leave the fabled legendary stuff to somebody else because I'm sure that there's some way to make this work that is busted, and I'm not smart enough or awake enough right now to do so after being up for however long. But it's interesting, being able to kind of use them to cheat the other ones out, but it being very specific. It's a really interesting kind of cycle with them, and they each have a decent amount of power with it, but getting that first one down with the 10 mana cost is definitely a big ask. But once you can get that going, then there's a lot of possibilities with it. I want to do more with the location, but I don't see it happening. Like 7 is so expensive for that location. So it's something fun and goofy that I like to do, but I'd spend 5. I'd probably do it if it was 5, but we've got to find some way to cheat that out to make that playable.
Pizza, how do you like the set?
For the preset, I'm not as excited about the top end. 10 mana is kind of a lot, and I guess you can play something like Twilight. What's the Twilight Medium to discount a lot of things, because even with I very much like Aviana Priest, and having access to like some sort of mana manipulation is already kind of applicable that way. But I guess like in that scenario, like I'm not going to do it for a 10 drop. I'm just going to continue playing Aviana all the time. I think that's an option available to you, but I don't think that that's an option that I'm going to take. What I do like a lot in this set is Amber Priestess. I think that Amber Priestess has not really been talked about as much, but like 2 mana 1/4 taunt that heals you is kind of a really strong stat line. It has a very strong effect because you can go even further, buff its health using the other cards in synergy, and then just continue to scale. There's going to be at least one point when a Soulbound Spire is in play and it pops this out, and you're going to be furious. So I think that card is quite strong. For the location, I'm actually kind of interested in the location because the first ability for it includes the stuff from the other classes, and then once it becomes Discover, then it like kind of consolidates itself down to both priest cards and neutral cards, which kind of feels like they're trying to guide you to this like last activation where you hit the Briarstrong Drake. It kind of feels like it's guiding you in that type of direction. I guess it's fine. I'm a much bigger fan of when cards will just sort of summon a thing and then you're forced to do with the thing. And the fact that Discover like excludes the other classes is kind of like whatever for me, but I can understand the design standpoint for stuff like that. It needs to be improved, and the decision is more important. But I'm like pretty fine with like most of the things. I think the hand buff stuff is quite applicable. I do kind of hope that Imbue Priest winds up seeing more play as a result of this, because these are all kind of accessible through that. But the only one that like the thing that I'm definitely the most excited about would be Amber Priestess. I think that card's very strong.
And I think that combined with the like you said, the hand buffs, the health hand buff stuff, and Eternatus where you battle cry. So it's a 6/2, but it could probably get up there pretty quickly and do some things at the end. I also think that I know 10 mana is a lot, but if you have a control priest that can typically bring a game to a late game, having the ability to, I don't know, destroy your starships and silence them first seems pretty good, and then summon some 8/8s right off the bat. I think there's potential there. So you would have to have a legit control priest, but if you do have a legit control priest, they're going to have tools at the end here that's really going to make a difference. All right, WorldEight. What do you think?
I'm a sucker for hand buff stuff. This is the most bizarre package that completely surprised me. I was just like, what is this? But I love it. Disciple of the Dove is a really good card. I think this you could build around this, or you could just like slam it in a priest deck. It's good on curve for pretty much most of the priest decks that I can think of. Eternus also just generally really good. One of the things that's kind of subtle about Eternus is that you could kind of value trade something down to 1 health and steal pretty much anything. Like let's say that there's an egg on board, you just get down to 1 health, you steal the egg, right? Like it's ideally you're buffing the health somewhere along the way, but that's not really a requirement. Augur is a little bit harder to assess because it's kind of late in kind of like that hand buff cycle, and you have to build your deck pretty specifically to it. But it's really powerful, right? Like you're all these cards that were designed to have some kind of setback, really low power, really low toughness. Augur just completely resets all that price cost. So if we think of it like a mana cheating Draenei, I think that gets a little bit more appealing. Because even like there's that neutral, that goofy looking neutral that's like a 7/2 for 3 mana. Well, this turns that into a 3 mana 7/7, right? Like you kind of have to wrap your head around it, but like Disciple of the Dove is also fine with that same minion, because now it's a 3 mana 7/4, which is that can live, that can survive some at least 1 blow, at least 1 AoE. So it's I think it's pretty promising. Like it's going to be a bit of deck building, but I'm excited to try and lose, but try again. But I do think that Disciple of the Dove, Amber Priestess, Eternus are just like really really good priest cards. Medivh, the thing that people are floating around is running Busy Peon to discount the location. So you can get your location down to 8 or 6 if you get double peons or resuscitate them or something like that. And that seems like a very reasonable price point, because if you can get Karazhan and Medivh down on the same turn, which is a Reno plus a 7/7 and 2 random 8/8s, and a location that'll repeat that, who cares about the staff? Nobody cares about the staff. Like that's fine, but the location and Medivh together, it could win games. So yeah, interesting stuff going on in Priest. Like other people said, I'm pretty optimistic for the hand buff stuff, but that's pretty typical for me for that type of archetype.
I also think Cease to Exist, the 3 mana rewind, silence, and destroy of enemy minion is going to be a really good card. I think it's going to help shut down a lot of things like Egg Warlock, because you can control the randomness if you work at it, and especially early in the game when they want to drop those minions and they don't. So I think it's got potential there too. So I'm interested to see what happens. It's definitely a weird set. It's definitely really weird. But with all this hand buff stuff, maybe my bomb priest has a future. We'll see. I don't know. And I think that's the last of the cards. So, does anybody have any thoughts before we wrap up the show?
Did you want to talk about neutrals, or we're good on them?
No, we talked about neutrals last week. So, let's just go ahead and come back to this.
Yeah, I mean, unless you've got any neutrals, especially with the class cards we've seen, we kind of just briefly went through them last week just because we hadn't seen any class cards yet.
I mean, it feels like the neutrals to me are really, for once, I haven't seen anything that really makes me worry that we're going to see this in every deck. There's no Fyrec, there's no Dragon Slop, there's no card that I'm afraid of that I think we're going to see in Druid and Death Knight and Priest and Mage and whatever. So that's what I don't care if a neutral is powerful, if it only is powerful in certain situations, but it's like powerful enough to fit in every deck. That's when I'm not a fan of it, because then we see it everywhere. Ziliax, Unkyliax, whatever. was there any pizza? Was there any neutrals that you are particularly interested in or worried about?
No, I think you hit it on the head. And I think that there's, nothing that like truly stands out, but we'll see. There's always something that surprises us, right?
Yep, at least not till the mini set. WorldEight, what are your thoughts?
Just that some of the neutrals make a little bit more sense with the priest set in mind. Like I was saying, like the Sand Maw was kind of like very gimmicky, but looks actually kind of reasonable now. So it's nice to see that. And or like some of the other dragons, right? Like if you got the Dragon of the Bronze, like Lifesteal, Divine Shield, and now someone's got a little bit of health on it, it's much more intimidating. So I think the preset, especially for me, pieced a lot of these questionable neutrals into a place of I get it now.
All right. So one question for both you guys, WorldEight and Pizza, because we talked about this last week. What are your thoughts on the potential comeback of Zarimi Priest with infinite damage hitting you in the face the next turn? Pizza, any thoughts?
I've never been that big of a fan of Zarimi personally, but it's already kind of seeing play now because of the 3-drop has done quite a bit of work. It did surprise me the first couple times that I had seen it, of just how consistent the 3-drop was. And I think that it probably should start to see at least a little bit more play in more board based decks. That individual card, as far as Zarimi goes, it's probably, it's probably good enough.
WorldEight, going to be playing some Zarimi Priest, or is Megasa going to be very excited?
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's a different type of deck, right? Like that. It requires 14 mana or whatever, right, to do the combo. I guess a ton of mana, but you can do Parrot Sanctuary, you can do Cash Cows. Like there's a lot of ways to get the mana there. And infinite damage is a lot of damage. So yeah, I mean it can win the game on the spot. And I think it can actually get there by like turn 9. Which may or may not be fast enough. The deck does can tank up to turn 9, so I don't know. I just feel like that card's gonna break so much stuff. Like infinite. Like that there's so many cards that are like, oh, if this attack and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, now I can get infinite armor with Earthen Scales. Like what does that mean? Like does that just I think it's gonna crash the client all over the place, but obviously they probably tested it.
Let's hope so. But you can also get it with the you can get infinite armor with the minion that freezes the miniature. Yep. So the question is if you have infinite and does infinite cancel out infinite, because infinite divided by infinite is still infinite. So
it's like a set number that just the game doesn't, or that we don't see, but the game sees.
So infinite, not quite infinite, but it'll be fun and interesting. I wonder. So like, if you run into something with infinite, does it just stay at infinite unless you hit it with something infinite? I don't know. It's gonna be one of those things. It's gonna be interesting to watch. All right. Well, if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by joining our Patreon over at patreon.com/breadandbutterhs. That's with an N. You get access to raw audio early. You get access to a member channel on Discord where you can help shape questions when we have guests. And if you'd like to help us with the non-financial way, you can let people know about the show and let us know how we're doing. Of course, the dog is starting to wake up right now. I don't know if you can hear that. And if you can't, just leave us a review. Great. It'd be great. It helps people find the show. Normally we ask one question and Pizza, we're going to save the normal question for you when we have you on the normal show in a couple weeks. But for the question this week, what is your favorite kind of pizza?
It's buffalo chicken.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Lee, how about yourself?
Oh, that was a good answer. I don't know. I eat all kinds of pizza, love all kinds of pizza. Yeah, I don't know. Just sometimes just like a cheese and pepperoni hits it. But yeah, buffalo chicken is an excellent answer.
Our local
How about yourself, Pylet?
Yeah, our local place has a loaded potato pizza that is fantastic.
Yeah, we have a place like that does pizza by the slice too, called Antonio's, that we had when I went to college in UMass, and there's also one in Newport, and they have great things like that, and like kielbasa and whatnot. So it's great. Um, Pilot, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Pylet712. That's Pylet. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky, as well as Discord.
And you can find me at Tito Santana HS on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and especially YouTube lately. Pizza, where can people find you if they want to come follow your content?
Almost every day. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/pizzahs. I'm on Twitter at, are we going to do? Is it going to be X this time? X /PizzaTCG and YouTube /PizzaHS.
I refuse to call it X. WorldEight, how about yourself?
Find me on Discord, WorldEight, or on any of the social platforms, WorldEight_HS. And you can listen to me on the BS podcast if you like.
And I do weekly. WorldEight, since we have you on right now, you have any shout outs or anything you'd like to promote this week aside from the VS report?
No, I want to shout out Pizza though. Thanks for coming on the show, man. You had a rough run during the competitive season. I don't think I've seen someone eat so many bad beats.
It happens to get used to it.
It's kind of tough. So that's the shout out, is that I watch your stream and you roll with it, man. And I respect that enormously.
Thank you, dude.
Oh, Pizza, do you have anything you'd like to promote or shout out?
Shout out my cat, who's probably like very, very ready to eat right now. But outside of that, thank you guys for having me. Shout out to everybody from Twitch who stuck around and wanted to watch. It was fun being here.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to actually, doing the normal show and interviewing with you soon. But thank you for making this kind of special opportunity more special. Pylet, you have anything you'd like to shout out or promote?
Yeah, I'm going to also shout out Pizza's cat for making it so that my cats aren't the only ones distracting us during the show, like what normally happens. And then also shout out over to Blizzlet, who it's a little bit unfortunate that we were kind of cross-scheduled, but they had an interview also tonight with one of the Battlegrounds devs, Mitchell over there. So go check that out if you're a BG's player.
And I'm going to shout out Ridiculous Hat, who has made his podcasting return. He was on the Gamers Inn last week, which was an awesome interview. And he's also going to be on again, where he does a deep dive into Hades 2, which if you like Hades and Hades 2, you're going to want to listen to that. Also want to shout out Ben Heathstone, who not only did we steal some of his images from, I was literally, as we were doing the podcast, my watch is beeping at me and he's getting the screenshots and put them right on Twitter right away about the things. He's on top of this game. So fantastic. Also want to shout out Alkali, who gave us this opportunity. We appreciate you. And I also want to shout out Doc McButt, who, if we didn't start the show together, we wouldn't be here doing card reveals. So thank you, Doc. We miss you, and I hope you're having a good time. But anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see ya.
See ya.
Bye. See ya.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.